Okay guys, welcome back to our second CwC project, this creating with code project. This one is called Animal Feeder, and this one we're going to learn about instantiation and do a little bit more in the way of a player controller and basically make a top-down shooting style game. So let's just go ahead and jump straight in. In Classroom, you have a package called CwC Animal Package. So that's the name right there, Animal Feeder, I'm sorry. And you're going to download that like we did last time by opening up the three dots and then opening a window and then downloading. And I like to put mine on my desktop to make it easier to find. I'm going to create a new project, and that new project is going to be 3D. This might take a second to load, but once it does, I'm going to choose to save this onto my desktop, just like I did with our player controller, and I'll call this one CwC II Animal Feeder. That's my name for it. You can name it, something else as long as it's easy to find, and hit create. And give the editor a second to set up. So yeah, this game, we're gonna have a player at the bottom of the screen, and then we're gonna have animals randomly coming from the top, moving down, and your player's gonna shoot food at them in order to feed them, and that'll essentially serve as our projectiles or bullets or whatever you want to call it. And then once they hit those animals, then those animals will disappear. This will probably be a couple different videos. This is a longer project. So I'm going to do the first part of it, getting our player, animals, all that set up, shooting your pizza, and getting them to move, and also destroy after they reach the top and bottom of the screen. So let's jump straight in. I'm going to make my window just a little bit bigger so I can see. And as I've done before, I like to go to Game, change that from free aspect to 16 by 9. And then I like to snap it over here to the side so I can see what I'm working with. And go ahead and take my package, drop it in, and import. Giving it some time to do so. Won't take too long. There's not too many things inside of this package. So there's a folder now called Course Library, and in it you have humans, food, animals, and so on. And I want to go ahead and start by taking humans. You have a bunch of different prefabbed people that you can choose from. And I'm going to choose any one of these guys. I'm going to drag this one in randomly. Oh, actually, before I do that, I lied. I need to go into my scenes, and I need to open up the Prototype 2 scene. We already have a scene set up for you. And currently what you have is an environment here, which is all of this. And as a child of it, you have the ground, which is the center one. You have a left border and a right border. The borders aren't really going to serve much purpose for us. They're just there to kind of make sure our camera stays in place. Your camera is already set up for you, sitting up high on the perceived Z-axis or Y-axis, basically, and rotate it downward. So it's set higher on the Y, and then rotate it so the Z on the camera is facing downwards. And that's why we have this top-down sort of view. So for my camera to look like my in-game camera, to look like this, I could just rotate and kind of sit it like this, but this looks fine for what we're doing. So camera's already taken care of for you. It's going to be a stationary camera. It should not move at any point. So I'm going to close up my environment now, go into my course library and take my humans and then choose a farmer. And I like the red shirt. I could drop it in here directly into the scene, but I prefer to drop it into the hierarchy so it goes right to 0, 0, 0. If your guy is not at 0, 0, 0, or girl, or whatever you chose, go over to the three dots on the transform when it's selected, and then choose reset position. I can't do that because I'm already at 0, 0, 0. It's all taken care of. And it's also a good habit to go ahead and change the name. It already has a very long and convoluted name. I'm going to change that to player, because this will be our player. And I haven't saved, so I'm going to hit Command S to save. So your player's at 0, 0, 0. Let's go ahead and add in a few animals and get them positioned as well. So back in your course library, animals, and I'm going to go with farm animals. I want to choose bigger animals for this one. I would encourage you, at the beginning of this project, I'm just going to actually choose some bigger animals so our colliders or hitboxes are big. And then we will go back and you can add smaller animals for more challenge. For now, I would encourage you to use some of the same ones I would use. So 3 larger animals would probably be, let's take the spotted cow. I'm going to drag it into the hierarchy. And this brown horse is pretty big. maybe outside of farm. These are forest animals. And I have like a moose. So I have 3 animals here. And even though the names are kind of long, that's okay. So I'm going to double click and go find them. So they're all at 0, 0, 0 because I dragged them into the hierarchy. And you can tell their scaling is actually kind of small. They're fine for the size. I wouldn't change their size, but you can tell these are normally very big models. I want to basically place my 3 animals, one here, one in the middle, and one on this side, and they're going to come down from 1 of 3 positions. So let's take the first one. Let's take my cow. I already know, based on, let's just take my player really quick. I know that if I drag him over here to the right, that border is about 15 or 14 away. I think 14 is a good number. And so that's going to be the same on the left. So 14 this way. So I'm working with an x of negative 14 to 14. And then I have a y of about, let's see, we could say 14 again. Or maybe something like 15 or so. 15 or 14 is a fine number. So for now, I'm going to take my cow, and I want to move it, let's say I want it in the center. So it shouldn't move on the X. It shouldn't move left and right. I want it right dead in the center. Y doesn't matter, because in this game, Y, height, isn't going to play a factor. It will actually, but we want everything at the same height. So leaving Y at 0 is the way to go. And then Z, let's go with 14. And that should move it up towards the edge of the screen. Up here. It's facing the wrong direction, so I need to change my rotation, and I know that the rotation I want to change, because it's going to spin facing my player, is going to be that y-axis. So 180 degrees will face it towards our player. Take my horse, and I want it to be on this corner, so that's going to be a negative 14. And on the Z, move it 14. And then once again, rotate by 180, like that. Moose. Let's go positive 14 to the right. Up 14 and spin it around. 180. So we have our animals kind of just set where we would like for them to be. And Command S to save. Okay. Let's also go ahead and add in our projectile, the thing that we're going to be shooting. So under course library, you have food. And there's a couple of different foods, right? For the sake of this game, I like the pizza. It looks more like a bullet kind of thing to me. So I'm going to take the food pizza and drop it in my hierarchy. And it should be where my player is. If I double click it, I'll note that it's like in the ground itself. And it's really small. So what I'm going to choose to do is to give it a Y of 1, move it up just a little bit. And then scaling, I'm going to go 2 by 2 by 2. And just so I can see a little bit better, I'm going to move it up on the Z. Let's go Z of like 5, just so I can see it a little bit better. And that looks okay. The problem with it being on a Y of 1, is that if you have any animals that are too small, they go underneath it. Let's go ahead and anticipate that you're going to use a smaller animal later. And I might just do a Y of like 0.5 so that it's like right off the ground, but not too far off. That looks pretty good. And from the top, you really can't tell the difference other than the shadow. So I'm going to save that. All right, let's go ahead and work on our player controller. Let's leave these things where they are. Let's get our player moving left and right, and then we'll work on shooting the pizza. So we know we need to be in a script. I'm going to go back to my assets folder, plus folder, add a new scripts folder. There you go. Inside of it, let's add a new C# script, and this is going to be called capital P, player, no space, capital C, controller, player controller. And give it a second, make sure that the name here matches the name here. And I'll double click to open that up. All right, so in the player controller, let's think through what we want to do. We want to move left and right. And so if we're going to be doing that, we want to do that in the update. You don't have to write my comments. I like to do this so I can think out loud. So I'm going to put a comment here. I'm going to say move left and right. So the things that I need to do to be able to move left and right is we know we need to access the horizontal input. So I'm going to go up here to line 6, and we've done this before. It's a public float. So this is what we did in our last game. We went between 0 and 1 and 0 and -1. And we made a float called horizontal input. Oops. and finish that with a semicolon. Horizontal input with a lowercase h, no space, capital I. Press return one more time to create a little space. And if we're moving, we need to have a speed. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to be a public, and I'll make it a whole number called player speed. Press return. Let me just save my little bit of progress that I have here. So moving left and right requires, actually we don't have this number set. We have to, it uses our left and right keys to make that number something. So we know that in line 20, if we ever use horizontal input, we need to see horizontal input equals input dot get axis, open up an argument, and it's a double quotation marks because it's a specific name, and it's what we have in our project settings known as horizontal. I think it's just called horizontal. And then semicolon. All right. Our last game, we did moving left and right using the transform translate, and actually that will be okay for this game because we want it to just move, slide across. So let's take the transform of our player. So this is going to be on our player. Dot translate. And it needs to know, as you can see right here, a vector 3. So I'm going to type in vector 3. And remember, I have a couple options. Vector 3 dot left, right, forward, back, up, and down. And we know that we want this to be our left and right controls. So I'm going to say right. And now I need to multiply it by these factors. I need to multiply it by the player speed, how quickly I want to move left and right, and by the player controls so that it uses the buttons. And then, of course, we've done this a couple times now, time dot delta time so that it is a smooth translation. I'm going to put a semicolon and save this. Currently, this won't work because of two things. One, my player speed has not been set. We'll do that in the inspector since it's public. And we have to apply it to the player. So I'm going to go back into Unity. It might need to compile, maybe not. Go to your player in the hierarchy, and then let's add component, player, controller. And there you go. You don't need to touch the horizontal input. I just made it public so we can see it. But the player speed, I'm going to try something like 10. Save that, and let's press play. And it should use my left and right controls to move left and right. There you go. And I can see that my player is moving left and right based on my keys, and I see that my horizontal input number is, if I click on the game view, changing based on those key presses. Perfect. However, this is not really that great because we don't want our player to ever leave the side of the borders. Now there's more than one way to do this. We can make it so that the player hits a wall. We put invisible colliders there, or we can set it with the script. And I'd rather you do it with a script because one, I want you to learn how to do that, but also adding walls and colliders sometimes can make things work in weird ways. So let's just work it through the script. So I'm going to go back to my player controller. Now I want to check for this, not in the start, but in the update. So what do I need to do? I'm going to go to the next line. Don't have to type this line out here. I'm just going to write a comment for myself. Make a right border. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to check and see if the player's transform.position, so if the player's transform.position on the X, which is left and right, reaches a certain number. And we know that 14 should be the number for us. If it tries to go past 14, then we're going to say just be 14, stay at 14. Never go past 14. That'll be our hard number there. So I'm going to go into the script again. Where did it go? There you are. So this is going to be an important thing. It's going to be an if statement. If this thing happens, do this. So if, open up an argument, transform dot, and it's the position, dot X. It's ever greater than 14. And you should be feeling something weird in your stomach right now. You should know that we should put hard numbers down here. But for now, let's just do that and then come back and change it. And then outside of the argument, I'm going to press return, open up some brackets, and I'm going to say, if transform.position.x is greater than 14, then make the transform.position equal to a new vector 3, a new XYZ position. Now, I wish I could just say transform.position.x equal to 14, but it needs to still know where we want to be on the Z and on the Y. So on the X, we want it to be 14, comma. For the Y, we want it to be what it already is. We don't want it to move. So we just need to say transform.position.y. Keep what you currently have at the Y position. And then Z, we don't want it to move forward or backwards. So we'll say transform.position, oops, hit return on accident, position.z. And at the end, put a semicolon. And instead of having 14 here, let's go ahead and make a variable to hold that information. And we'll make this a private, because we don't ever need to change this. We know that 14 is the number. We've already looked at it. A private integer, private whole number called, just call it border value, something like that. Border value is what I went with. And I can go ahead and set it equal to 14, semicolon. Even though I've made this variable, you can see for me it's a light gray, which means I haven't used it. That means I need to come down here and say, change that 14 out with border value. And same thing here, border value. Save that. And what we should see is that whenever I try to go to the right, if I try to ever go past positive 14, it should stop me. And it's basically just setting my number. Oh, there it is. See, I can't go past 14. Perfect. By the way, the animals are moving because they already have something, a component on them, an animation component, and we won't really bother with animation in this one. So I just already have that on there for them to have that running motion. Let's go back into our script and let's do the same thing for the left position. So I'm going to go to my line 29 outside of this bracket while still inside of the update. So check your brackets. And I'm just going to copy, Command C, line 30, paste. And instead, if we ever try to go below border value, well, that's 14, but we want it to be negative 14. So I can just do that by putting a negative border value. Then set my transform.position to a new vector 3, negative border value. So negative 14. So that takes care of our left. By switching this sign and making these negatives, so it's a negative 14, that's done. I press play, and I should not be able to go past it on the left-hand side. Done, done. All right, that feels pretty good. All right, so right now we want we don't want our player to move forward, but we want the pizza and the animals to move forward. So let's go ahead and make a script to handle that. Inside of my scripts folder, I'm going to create a new C# script called capital M, move, capital F, forward. Press return. Check and make sure that the names match. Give it a second to compile. Yep. And then open up Unity. So for this one, we just want to basically, in our update, because we want this to always be moving forward, comments for myself, is move forward. That's pretty straightforward. And what we need for movement is line 6, we need speed. So I'm going to make this a public integer called speed. Semicolon. Press return, create a little space just so I can see. So line 18 for me, I'm going to press return. And to move forward is pretty straightforward. It's another transform.translate. And I need to choose my vector 3. Well, that one's pretty straightforward. Vector 3 dot forward. And we need to multiply it by the speed and time dot delta capital T time. There you go. That will move you forward constantly, which is what we want our animals and our pizza to do. So I saved my script. Go back. It won't work for two reasons. One, I never set speed, and I didn't apply it yet. So let me go to my pizza and add component, move forward. Move forward, pizza speed, I'm going to go with 10. Let's save that. And if I press play, I should see my pizza move forward. There you go. Easy, easy, easy. It's moving off into the distance. We're going to want it to destroy in a little bit once it gets to an edge, but we'll fix that in just a moment. So the problem with just having this script on our one food pizza here, right, is that it doesn't apply to everything else. So instead, I'm going to go to Assets, create a new folder called Prefab, So prefabricated objects, and drag in my food pizza 01 into there. And it'll ask, what do I want to do? I want to do original prefab. I'm going to make my own prefab. And I'm going to even go ahead and change that name. So I'm going to hit open prefab and change its name to just pizza. So I can remember the difference. So I'm going to rename file. There you go. And to get out of this in the inspector, I'm going to go back to the hierarchy. In the scene, is press back. And I can test this to see if this pizza actually moves forward the way I want it to. So you see the prefab already has the script on it and has the name pizza. If I press play, if I take my prefabs and I just drag them into the scene, you'll see that they are shooting off wherever I tend to happen to drag them. There you go. And you can see in the hierarchy too that those clones, those copies of the prefab, are still in the scene. This is how we make bullets, right? You clone one object over and over. Instead of storing all of them inside the hierarchy and turning them on, we just make more of them by dragging them in, essentially. So if I get out of play mode, you'll see that they go away. I don't need this object anymore because I already now have a prefab that has that information I need on it. So I'm going to hover over it, control right click, and hit delete. I haven't saved recently, so I'm going to hit Command S to save. All right, so let's make it so our player shoots the pizza out. Since we already have a script on our player called player controller, I'm going to open that up again. I want to be able to shoot the pizza whenever I hit a key. Let's go with the space key. So in my update, I'm going to add some notes for myself below this if statement. So I'm going to say shoot food when space is pressed. All right, so the things I need. Well, I need an if statement. So I'm going to go to the next line and say if, open argument, input. Now this one's going to look different. It's not going to be an input.key. We're going to do input.get button. Space is a specific button. It has a name. A key is like assigned, like a direct name. We're going to give, like you have to use the string name. Here's like a button that's assigned in the project setting. So don't stress about that yet. We'll talk more about get button. And all that. So this is a get, oh, you know what? No, I lied. Let's do get key. Let's do get key. Get key down. So when I press this key down, open an argument. Instead of it being a direct name, you see how all these key codes showed up? Let's do key code space inside of that argument, like that. So get key down. I'll talk about button and keys probably in the next video. Let's just wait on this one. End of line 36, press return, open some curly brackets. And the thing that we want to do. Now this is a new concept I really want you to understand. It's called instantiation. Instantiate and open up an argument. So instantiation means to clone something, to put something, a copy of something into the world, to instantiate, to create an instance of something. And an instantiation, I'm going to go to the next line. You don't have to type this out. I just want to let you know this. It needs to know three things. It needs to know what I'm copying. The next comma, it needs to know where to copy it. So where does it show up in the world? And then finally, what rotation does it have? So where should it be facing? So where and then the direction it faces. So what, where, and rotation. I'll get rid of the word right. So I basically, the way I think of it is what, where, rotation. That's the three arguments inside of instantiation. So let's think about what our what's going to be. We want it to be the pizza. So up here at line 9, we need to hold a variable for our pizza. Public, it's a game object, and I will call it pizza prefab. It's the prefab to pizza, the one that we have in that prefab folder. Pizza prefab. And so inside of my instantiation, line 39, inside of that argument, I will put pizza prefab. So that's my what. Where I want it to come from is from our player. Now for us, the player controller is on the player. So we just need to say where we're currently at, which is the transform dot position. Where we're at is transform dot position. And then comma, the last thing it wants to know was rotation. And we want it to have the rotation the pizza prefab already has. The direction it was already facing. So we say pizza prefab, it's your transform dot rotation. Just take what you already have and hit a semicolon at the end. And that's it. That will allow us to shoot the pizza. It won't work yet because we have to assign this game object in the inspector. So I need to save my script, Command S, go back in, and on my player script, my player controller script, I will see a new pizza prefab object. Now, the problem is if I try to go click for it, I'll lose this in the inspector. I want to keep this here. So up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little lock. You can lock it. And now I can click around, and you'll notice that this is not moving. Assets, prefab. Now I have my pizza. I'm going to drag it into that slot. And just remember to unlock it. Sometimes I forget to do that. So now there you go. So let's Command S, save, and press play. And I should be able, with the space key, make sure I'm in the game, shoot pizzas. Boom. There you go. Feels good. All right. Perfect. I think I got time for one more thing for this video. Or you know what? Let's stop here. And then the next video, let's get our animals moving down. And then we'll have everything destroy when they hit the borders. But I think that's enough for this video. I'll see you in the second of our animal feeder video.